Hello and welcome to On Fire here on Daily Mirror. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. Today on our program, we have with us Justice Minister Ali Sabry. Minister Sabry, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.
So, Minister, I would like to start off with one of the most pressing topics that is being discussed with regards to Sri Lanka in the international community and even here by civil society, and that's with regards to the Prevention of Terrorism Act. I know your ministry is involved in trying to do some changes there. What is the status of that right now, Minister?
In fact, about a couple of months ago, Minister of Defense, that is Excellency the President, the Honorable Foreign Minister then, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena, and myself submitted a joint cabinet paper to the cabinet saying that the PTA, or at least some provisions of the PTA, need to be revisited, both in terms of enhancing the provisions for national security in terms of where this law is outdated, some of the more recent threats, what could be done through the internet and various forms of currencies and money laundering and all are not addressed. Similarly, some of the areas which directly affects the judicial power of the people as well as the liberty and freedom of the subject need to be revisited. So in terms of that, we appointed a subcommittee of the expert. Those experts primarily comprise personnel from defense establishment, the Ministry of Justice, and the Honorable Attorney General's Department. So they are in the process of finalizing it. Hopefully, they should provide the initial report in about a month or so.
So in a sense, we are looking at still amending the existing PTA. We are not looking at abolishing it and replacing with a new law, is it?
Yeah, as at now, most probable outlook would be, or the outcome would be an amendment to the law. Even Justice Nawaz's committee, which had been appointed in order to look into the previous acts, had also suggested an amendments to be brought in. Whether you call it amendment or otherwise, if the controversial or the obnoxious provisions could be revisited and sorted out, it doesn't matter or make a huge difference whether you call it as a new act or an amended act.
The reason I mentioned that is because we had a program just recently where we discussed the issue on human rights, and these activists who attended the discussion were very firm that the PTA needs to be abolished as a whole, as opposed to amending it, and that amending it would not go well with the international community, especially even the Human Rights Council. How do you see that?
Oh, that's different people can have different views. And if you see recently, United Kingdom had brought a new law which says that for whatever the work what they have done outside the country, they cannot be prosecuted. No? America had brought so much of laws to prevent their forces and all those things. So we can't be just catering into the international community per se. Our national security is foremost and we cannot compromise on that. One need to understand that. So because the moment the national security is compromised, the problem is for the community and for the people in this country, irrespective of the race or religion or anything. So therefore, it is important. We have seen this 71, 87 to 89, LTT war, and 21 for the Easter Sunday attack. So we can't take a chance on that. It's too precious for us, the national security is. So merely because the international community says, or to please the international community, we cannot play into the gallery. There has to be a balance between our national security and the rights and the freedom and the liberty of the subject, which are invariably Sri Lankan citizens. So we need to find that balance between these two. And that's how government and the cabinet is looking at it.
But how would you respond to concerns, Minister, that Sri Lanka, the government especially, is using national security as an excuse to bring in certain laws and regulations to control various aspects of society or various issues which would, go against them?
Yeah, these kind of criticism is not new. It has been always there when the government is in power. Opposition says always the case, under under Jayawardene administration, Premadasa administration, Chandrika administration, Ranil Wickremesinghe administration, all these have been there. But I know if somebody use it excessively, I think the judiciary should be empowered to have that check and balances. That's how this happens in other countries all. So that's where the balance is necessary. So we need to have a check and balances in order to do that. Is always this resistance between or the differences of opinion between the party in power, which is the executive, which is the government, and the people have been there ever since the democracy are born, or even before that, for that example. So it is there as a democracy where the judiciary need to play that important role to check and balance those competing interests. So I think luckily for Sri Lanka, we have a vibrant, strong judiciary. We are in the process of strengthening it further. I have already kind of increased the numbers of judges in the Court of Appeal from 12 to 20, and Supreme Court from 11 to 17. So, and they have been pretty vociferous and forceful in their determination. So that's the way forward. I think we will never be able to get that complete package with the civil society want or with the government want. It always will be somewhere in between, which will anyway criticize. So that is where the judiciary need to play the role to balance it.
I mean, there's also criticism that the judiciary is not fully independent, that there is interference in judicial processes. Is that something that you would disregard?
I think that's very unfair. That's not correct. I mean, our judiciary, comparatively, if you look at anywhere, I mean, there is no interference at all. Absolutely, there is no interference. That is for sure. But in terms of being proactive, and there is a long way to go. I would say that, like in terms of the Supreme Court of India, they are very proactive, and that. But there is absolutely no interference with the judiciary. Definitely not under last couple of years, and not we have never been in. I mean, you can take that for granted. We will never interfere on that. But Supreme Court or Court of Appeal could be more proactive if necessary and look at some of these provisions, because nobody is above the law. No law is above the supervision of the court. So that is foregone conclusion. If some of those provisions, if feels is threatening the rule of law, the constitutional right of the subject, that could be tested, and people can be forced to submit evidence to verify whether continuous detention or continuous charging under a particular statute is reasonable or not. So I'm sure over a period of time, Sri Lankan Supreme Court will do. I mean, they have done it. If you look at when we brought the 20th Amendment, Supreme Court intervened and very clearly told certain clauses you cannot pass without a referendum, without an independent, including the immunity for the president. So without an independent judiciary, you couldn't have got that kind of a verdict. Similarly, Port City, there were about 17 of the clauses. They told that you need a two-thirds, whereas the Honorable Attorney General have said it can go by a simple majority. So I think our democracy is vibrant. Of course, challenges are there. Despite those challenges, our judiciary had done a good job as far as independence is concerned, but I wouldn't say the same thing about the efficacy and efficiency of it in terms of time taken to resolve conflicts and the issues, and being proactive in some of those most controversial issues involved in some of the subjects. Like long way to go, but I'm happy given the ground situation, our judiciary had maintained its independence.
You mentioned efficiency. I mean, this delay in cases has been something that has been discussed for a number of years. I mean, what is the Justice Ministry doing to address that issue, Minister?
So a number of reasons. Of course, if you look at this is an area which we have long neglected. For example, we have 800,000 cases pending, and we have just 350 judges. So there is an index in terms of the world where how many judges per million of a population. So good countries where top judiciaries are very proactive, very efficient, efficacious judiciaries are there. There are about 150, 125, 130 judges per 1 million. Like countries like Germany, countries like Russia have about 200, in fact, but even middle income countries like Taiwan has about 68, 70 judges for 1 million, but Sri Lanka, for entirety of 22 million people, we have 350 judges, which works out to 15 judges per million population. So there is a huge dearth of number of judges and the courthouses in order to do in terms of sheer volume. So that's an area we are looking at it. It is in that context that I increased the Supreme Court number of the Supreme Court judges, thereafter Court of Appeal judges. We are in the process of increasing the High Court judges and the other court judges. We couldn't progress as much as we expected unfortunately due to the COVID pandemic. A lot of things have to be reframed, re-energized. Unfortunately, a lot of things we couldn't achieve during the last 15 months, but we have moved on. And we are definitely in an ambitious program to revamp the laws in the country and to revise the outdated laws and to introduce new laws, new courthouses in order to reduce the time period which are taken. For example, I'll just give one example. We are in the process of finalizing a court called a small claim court, whereas up to about 1.5 million rupees of a claim, you don't need to go through cumbersome trials here. It's like you tender documentation. Based on the documentation, a judgment to be given probably in about a year time rather than the 5, 6, 7 years what we are taking. There is another courthouses we are trying to establish an investor court for anything above 100 million commercial matters. Will be separately looked at it. So we are looking at it, innovative ways of doing it, and we are in the final space of rolling out the digitalization so that we embrace the technology in terms of filing, e-filing, e-hearing. For example, say the government analyst, no point of from Sri Lanka, from Colombo to go to Batiklo all the way to give evidence in a case and come back using 3 days of a time. If he can give evidence online from his office for half an hour, 1 hour, that would save time for him as well as for his institution. So we are looking at innovative ways and all those things in the process of rolling out the digitalization in the country. And we are establishing new courthouses, recruiting more judges. So all in all, with all those things, I'm sure there will be a progress, but it will take time.
As you know, minority rights, it's something that is being discussed widely by the international community and human rights groups and even the Human Rights Council. You yourself are a member of the minority community in Sri Lanka. You are a Muslim. Do you see, for your own eyes, issues faced by the minority community in Sri Lanka?
Minorities or otherwise, there are issues. I mean, I would use the word the marginalized community need not to be the minorities in terms of ethnic or religious background. That's also one ground, but maybe even the LGBT community, the ladies, the women, the children, the vulnerable. So the constitutional law is about equality. Equality is about treating everybody equally. So there are certain areas, challenges in that, the way things are happening. It's an ongoing struggle. So that is where the judiciary has a massive role to play, because if you look at the three arms of the government, whether we like it or not, the executive and the legislature is controlled by direct voting of the people. So all over the world, whether it's America or UK or USA or anything, this populism comes into their the working on the day-to-day, and their, in terms of their policies, their workings and everything, whether we like it or not. You take India, you take Malaysia, you take UK, USA, anywhere for that matter. I mean, there are huge policy differences between America and Trump and America under Biden. So no, these things happen. So it is in that context that judiciary has a massive role to play in order to be in the leveler to safeguard the rights of all citizens across the board, irrespective of any differences of whatsoever. I do concede there are issues, so those need to be addressed on the long run.
Since you mentioned about the LGBT community, I just wanted to ask you, what is the government position as far as LGBTQI rights are?
I mean, government has not particularly discussed that. But as far as I am concerned, I feel Sri Lanka, in terms of Article 12, 13, 14, we have ensured the rights of everybody, irrespective of their race, religion, or sexual orientation, or anything of that matter. So they are entitled for rights, just like anyone else. I'm open about it, and that's their right, and we are who are we to judge them, you know? And so that's my position, and they're entitled just to live as equal citizens without any hindrance or any sorts of problem for them.
But is there a move to include LGBT rights specifically in the Constitution by mentioning it, since they seem to be discriminated where it comes with employment and other issues?
Not right now, as far as I know. So we are still in the process of drafting it. I don't know whether we can specifically include them, or there is a necessity to specifically include them. But certainly I feel that they should be treated as equals of what they claim, and just like anyone else.
There have been calls in the past also for the drafting of a new constitution. Is that something that will happen under this administration?
Yeah, actually, last year we appointed a high-powered expert committee to draft a new constitution, led by Mr. Ramesh De Silva, President's Counsel, the very well-known Sri Lankan lawyer. And then that team comprises of top lawyers, academics, jurists, and from all genders, representing all ethnic groups. So they are in the process of finalizing it. And what I understand is that they have done their draft in their language. Now it is being treated by the legal draftman in order to put it into the legal framework. So once that is there, I think we have a document to discuss, and the politicians to take it forward.
I also want to raise two sensitive cases that are being discussed a lot these days as well. One, of course, is about the releasing of, or the pardoning of Tuminda Silva. Now, this is being raised at the Human Rights Council at the ongoing session. This has been mentioned even by civil society in Sri Lanka. There is this food of thought that the presidential pardon system as a whole is being misused or abused. How would you react to that?
That's a president's power. So president has used it. I can only say that he had used that power by following the proper procedure. And beyond that, that's a question you should ask from the president himself. But
don't you feel that the confidence in the judicial system is lost when certain individuals are freed using the presidential pardon?
No, the issue is there are argument pro and against it. Basically, you also know there were leaked tape records where the sitting judges were influencing and discussing the cases just before the judgment being pronounced. Is that correct, or is that fair? So this has so there are two sides to every story, and that was a shocker. We knew how they were discussing the cases, what is the judgment going to be, how it's going to be. So so this particular case, in that matter, had been in the limelight for all the wrong reason. So beyond that, as to how it was being given and all those things, is President had used this discussion in terms of Article 34. I mean, yeah, that's his discussion. He has used it, and as to how and what reason, I have not been informed. It is for the president himself.
I also want to raise the Lohan Ratwata incident. I know you mentioned this in Parliament, that a committee is being appointed headed by a retired High Court judge. As far as the government is concerned, what is the position of the government, on this whole incident, how it happened and how it needs to be dealt with?
Yeah, there had been an incident. That is why Honorable Minister himself has understood the gravity of it and resigned. So that's the first step. So though we have taken it very lightly in the Sri Lankan context, I think this is something of a new development. No one had stepped down before, so he has stepped down, and the first that will ensure an independent inquiry into it. And thereafter, Human Rights Commission has launched its own inquiry. They have already gone and recorded a statement, and they will conduct that. That's an independent organization. Glad that they are doing it. And then the Victims and Witness Protection Authority had already written to ensure the safety and security of the victims who are there. And we have given unimpeded access to all the opposition MPs, whoever who wants to visit them, to go and talk to them and find out, because we don't want to put anyone under any pressure for that matter. And thereafter, the CID has commenced an inquiry. So those inquiries have to come out with it. As far as the cabinet and the ministry is concerned, at the instance of the cabinet, or at the direction of the cabinet, I have already appointed a judge to hear this, a retired judge to go through this and submit as a report. So once that report comes, I will transmit to the relevant authorities.
Is there a time frame by when you expect this committee to complete the investigation?
Yes, I have given them 60 days, so hopefully we'll get that within that.
And the concern is that Lohan Ratwata continues to remain as a state minister, although in a different portfolio. Isn't there pressure in the government for him to step down as a whole, so that all these concerns and allegations can also be laid to rest?
No, I think just like anyone else, in terms of Article 13, Section 5, Sub-Article 5, there is presumption of innocence. So if he answers for that, we also have to give that, just like anyone else. So these we can't decide for himself at the beginning. So, but in order to ensure a free and fair inquiry, we have got him, or he himself attended the resignation and gone out. So thereafter, anything thereafter has to take place after giving proper hearing and following the proper procedure. That will take place. As to what actions will be taken is left to the hierarchy and top of the administration and the party.
What is the status of the MMDA reforms, Minister? That is also something that the Muslim community has been discussing a lot, and I know there was some progress on that matter. Where does that stand right now?
That's in fact, that this matter had been discussed for a long period of time. This is not that the government is pushing or anything. From the community itself had been craving for this kind of reform for a long period of time. In fact, there had been 4 different subcommittees which had appointed at 60s, 70s, 80s, and 2000s. So in terms of that, I have submitted a cabinet paper. On the basis of a cabinet paper, initial draft had been done. so that once that draft is finalized, it will probably go before the cabinet once again. So we are discussing in that. There are some concerns from the community. So we are taking that also into consideration in order to arrive at a decision which where we could reach as much as consensus amongst the community.
Right, Minister, we will leave it at that. Thank you for taking time to join us in this discussion. And to all our viewers, do join us again for our next episode of On Fire here on Daily Mirror.
Thank you. Thank you.